In this workbook, we have a simple pivot table on sheet 1. And if you want, you can take a peek here down in the Data tab, so you can see the underlying data there. But let's go back here to sheet 1. First thing we want to do in editing the pivot table is let's change this sheet name to something useful. Instead of sheet 1, you can double-click it, maybe call it pivot table or call it summary, something a little bit more useful and understandable. Now let's go and do some filtering. And you see up here we have these little down arrows for our column and row labels and report filters. Let's start by filtering the months. Click this down arrow, and right now you can see we have all 3 months showing, but maybe we just want to see January. Perhaps it's the beginning of the year and we want to see how sales are going just for this month, or perhaps data are not complete for the other months. And click OK, and now you can see we're filtered just by January. Maybe we want to see 2 months, so click that filter again. Down here, select multiple items, and now you can put checks in those 2 months, and then click OK, and now we see we're sorted by multiple items. Maybe we want to filter by region. Perhaps we get a request from department managers or sales managers for specific data. So click that down arrow, and over here where it says select all, just click that so we deselect all the regions. Maybe we only want to see the central and northeast regions. Perhaps we have a sales special going on in those 2 regions, so we want to look at those. And click OK, and now we have just those 2 regions selected. Maybe the sales special that's going on is only going to be for the 1 liter and 2 liter size. So click this down arrow, again, deselect that, select all, and we'll check just 1 liter and 2 liter size. Click OK. By the way, if this 1 liter kind of annoys you there, that's aligned to the left, you can simply click it, and in the Home tab, just click the right align to format it a little nicer. Now that we have it filtered, perhaps we want the underlying data for just these numbers that we have. So double-click any of them, and you notice that Excel creates a brand new worksheet down here with just the underlying data for that particular cell that we double-clicked. Now, this is not dynamic, this is simply extracting, and you can click on any of these, and you can see up here in the formula bar, this is simply like a copy and paste. Well, let's go back to the summary tab so we get back to the pivot table. Now, if we decide that we want to unfilter these, there's a couple of ways you could do it. You could unfilter one by one, click the filter button. Now you could mess around down here by selecting and deselecting, but it's a little faster if you go over here and you click clear filter. Now you've cleared that filter, but we still have these 2 that are filtered, and if you want to clear all the filters, there's a faster way to do it. Up here in the ribbon bar, we have the Pivot Table Tools section. Now that's visible only if you're clicked inside the pivot table. Click the Options tab, and over here click Clear and choose Clear Filters. Don't choose Clear All, because if you do that, you'll wipe out the pivot table. Just click Clear Filters, and now the filters are cleared out from all of those options. Okay, well, this is a pivot table, so let's do a little pivoting. Let's take the month over here in the Report Filter section, and let's drag month down below region. And look what happens to the pivot table. So now we have the months are separated by region. So maybe if you have separate sales managers for each region, you could give this piece of the pivot table to each sales manager and say, hey, here's how your products are doing. Let's pivot a little bit more. Let's take size and let's drag size into the report filter. So we kept the original filtering by region, but now we can filter it further by size. Maybe we only care about the 2 liter size. So click 2 liter, click OK. So we still have it filtered by region and subfiltered by month, but only for the 2 liter size. And if we want to see every size again, click that filter button and choose all and click OK. Well, what if we decide that we want to see average values instead of sum values? Because what's happening here is this is simply adding all the numbers together. You want to make sure you're still in the Pivot Table Tools section and the Options tab. And over here where it says Summarize Values By, click that, choose Average, and now you have average values instead of summary values. And if you want to change it back, you could always go back here and change it to sum. There's some interactive filtering that we can do. And again, in the Options tab, click Insert Slicer and choose Insert Slicer from the flyout. And we get the Insert Slicer dialog box. And what this will let us do is put a little panel that will let us filter by any of these data points. So let's choose month and region and click OK. And we can separate these slicers here just to make it a little easier to deal with. Before we do anything, let's make them look nice. Select one of the slicers, and over here in the Options tab, let's click down and maybe let's give it a green olivey look, and choose the other slicer and give this maybe a slightly different green olivey look. And while we're at it, let's format the pivot table, then we'll use the slicers. So click somewhere in the pivot table, and again in this section here, go to Design, and when you click that down arrow, you can roll your mouse over, and before you pick one, you can see what it's going to look like. I'll choose this. So what are the slicers all about? Well, in the region slicer, click, let's say, Southeast, and now you've immediately filtered it by Southeast or by Central or by West. In the month, right now we see all of them. Maybe you want to see just January. Well, we can choose multiple values. For example, if we want to see January and March but not February, make sure January is selected, or select it if you need to, and hold down the Control key on your keyboard and Control-click March. And now we have January and March. Maybe we want to see just the Central and Northeast regions, so click Central, and again hold down the Control key on your keyboard and click Northeast. So now we have just the Central and Northeast sections. So if we have a client or a boss or somebody who wants this specific information, you can see it takes only 1 or 2 clicks to get the specific detailed information that we want. Now, I hope this has given you a good idea of what pivot tables are and how they can be useful. And there are a lot more ways that you can modify them. We just don't have time to go into really tremendous detail in this course. But if you do want to learn about pivot tables in depth, take a look at some of the great pivot table courses in the lynda.com library.